This session deals with repatriation. I'm Harold Jacobs. I'm the moderator. We'll also be doing a repatriation of some objects later. Our speakers this morning are Irene Dundas, works for Cape Fox Corporation. Her Tlingit name is Keex.Kwaan. She's Teikweidi. Her clan comes from Keex. And our other speaker is, well, Irene is dealing with internal policies and procedures for repatriation of objects in the tribe. And Robert Sam is Keex.Kwaan from the Dog Salmon House here in Juneau. He's Kwaan. His name is Sik'nax.adi. Robert has worked a lot with the repatriation of human remains, and his presentation is about the respectful treatment of those who came before us. So after they're done, we will do the repatriation of the 3 objects that we picked up in Denver last week from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. So to start off this morning will be Irene Dundas.
Thank you, Harold. The first slide here I put up because I'm always really, really nervous, and I just skip on and I go into my presentation. So this slide was to remind me that I had to give my Tlingit name and who I'm, where I'm from. And thank you, Harold, for introducing me. I guess to go into a little bit more detail. My mom's probably going to kill me if she sees this picture. My mom is the gal in the middle photo, the real big hair. I don't, what they call those beehives back then. It was the only picture I had on my computer of my mom, this Lorraine Shields or Chiggy Shields, Chiggy Austin from Keex. There's myself and my 2 girls. You seen Dorian here earlier. She didn't want to come today because she's hanging out with her new friend. Her Tlingit name is Keex.Kwaan, named after my great-grandmother, Bessie Jackson from Keex, and my daughter, the gal in the middle, the blondie. Her Tlingit name is Keex.Kwaan, got from my grandma Lena in Keex. Our Tlingit name, or their Tlingit names, were given to them from my grandma Kwaan, also in Keex. My son down in the lower corner, I believe my left, your right, is Ganuk. Got his Tlingit name from my uncle Clarence Jackson. My husband in the background, Archie Dundas, he's Tsimshian and Tlingit. His grandfather is Arnold Booth from Sitka, Keex.Kwaan. And my brother above him is dancing in my uncle or my grandpa Tommy Jackson's regalia, and his name's Lawrence, and then my father and my brother singing Wishkana is his Tlingit name. I have been working for Cape Fox Corporation and Cape Fox Heritage Foundation for the past 15 years. I have been doing the repatriation for the Saanya Kwaan and recently the Kwaan. And if you were in the presentation earlier, over in the other room by Emily Moore, if she's in here, Gunish Cheesh to her, she did a wonderful presentation about our repatriation. Anyways, the repatriation we've been doing, before I get into the internal policies, I want to give you a little bit of background on why we formed these internal policies for the tribe, not internal policies for the clan, because clans have their own protocol. So these are internal policies for the tribal government, ANC, Native Corporation. First of all, we did repatriation for the Saanya Kwaan, the NAGPRA, Teikweidi, and the Keex.Kwaan. In the picture here is a picture of Cape Fox Village. We identified all the clan houses and the clan members who went in most of these clan houses, and we identified each totem pole that sits in front of these houses. And what we had did is, by the totem pole, who we kind of had an idea of which clan owned it, we were able to identify the clan house and the clan name behind the totem pole. In 2001, Cape Fox Corporation hosted a 100 years of healing ceremony. We repatriated one house, and it wasn't just the front house or the frontlet. The Harriman expedition literally took the whole house. It wasn't just the frontlet, it was the floorboards, sideboards, the roof, everything. They took the 2 house posts that were inside of it, which were at the Burke Museum. We also repatriated 2 house posts from NAMI, or National Museum American Indian, 1 totem pole from the Field Museum, 1 totem pole from Cornell, and 1 totem pole from Harvard. By size, it was the largest repatriation in the nation. All the pieces were returned back in 1 day. And this repatriation, or when the Harriman expedition taken the pieces, it wasn't just like they went there and they decided they got onto the beach early in the morning and they just said, well, we'll take a couple totem poles. Well, the totem pole that we repatriated back from National Museum American Indian, you could see it on the right-hand corner. That totem pole was 42 feet tall. So it took the whole entire crew to dig it up, and they actually took, they took 6 of these totem poles, and they're across the nation. This project was a very, very huge research project because Keex.Kwaan, or Cape Fox, is the last island that makes, Keex.Kwaan is the last island that makes Alaska part of the United States. 50 miles south of that is Cape Fox Village, where the Saanya Kwaan people lived, and we are a border town. And border town meaning that we have not only the Tlingit people, who are the original people, the Keex.Kwaan and the Saanya Kwaan from that area, we have the Haida and the Tsimshian, who are also coming in and out of Keex.Kwaan and the most southern areas. We hosted a very large repatriation. We didn't want to call it a potlatch, but it was a ceremony that when the Poles came home, we wanted to recognize the healing ceremony, because a lot of emotions went on while we were bringing these things home. And we had Richard Dalton, who helped a lot on protocol. The dilemma I feel, or the frustration that we have down in our area, is that our people were in Saxman and Cape Fox. They had moved from Cape Fox Village in 1892, and a lot of those, well, there was nobody left, no elders left who were able to recall that information. So when we started researching all these artifacts, we had to really, really search hard on who they belonged to, what clan they belonged to. We had to get photos, try to identify the photos that were taken by Edward Curtis, and it took a lot of effort. We did genealogy. We ended up, Cape Fox Corporation ended up doing a very large genealogy project that included 221 family trees that link back to the main houses of the Saanya Kwaan and Tonta Kwaan. Some of the houses are, or not some of the houses, some of the family trees go back to 1550. A lot of it includes Tlingit names. There's some areas in the family trees where you could see the clan leaders. We did not try to identify the clan leaders in this or in the genealogy project, just simply to identify clan members to help link the Saanya Kwaan people back to the present day Saanya Kwaan people. A lot of the people are dispersed right now. We don't have any Keex.Kwaan people anymore in the Saanya Kwaan, Cape Fox currently. And currently we're now doing the repatriation for the Tonta Kwaan. Quite recently we had done a very, very sacred repatriation back in August. and it was for human remains. We returned them back to the original area that they were taken from. That process, that whole process was just a very beautiful process. We were informed that there were some sacred human remains in the Chicago Field Museum, and it took a while for us to decide to repatriate the human remains just because of sacredness behind them. And the clan members of the clan met constantly and were talking within each other, within their own clan. And I just want to say, as myself, as the repatriation manager, I don't have any involvement in them. What I do is I facilitate these clan meetings that when I present or when we have an object coming home, I call them and the clan meets and they talk about the item that is supposed to be coming home. And anyways, we repatriated these human remains last August, and I was getting on to the beauty of the repatriation. Is what came out of that repatriation is we flew to Chicago. We made contacts with the TSA, the head NAGPRA department. Ended up getting us a contact with somebody in DC that lifted all restrictions for items to come back on a plane. And they walked us, when we were bringing the remains back home, we walked the remains from the minute we got to the airport. They handled the remains very beautifully. They made sure they went through a secure area. They did not, you know how it is when you're flying and you have to take off your shoes, you have to go through screening, and sometimes you are very upset when you leave the airport or when you're on the plane. And when we did this process, everything just fell into its own place. The gal that came with us, who is part of the clan, who the human remains are from, she composed a song. Their clan songs have disappeared in time, and she composed a song that now the new Kainai or the Kainai clan now can sing when they're doing their ceremonies. So that was a very beautiful process. And even when they went to return the human remains back to the original area, Willard was telling me, you know, the Forest Service dug an area where they wanted the remains to go. And then Willard kind of was, you know, dinking around the area, and he found the place where she had come from, the remains had come from. And then while he was standing there, he leaned up against the tree and a feather fell upon him. And then he then said, you know, this is where she needs to be returned. So they then returned her to the exact spot where she had come from. And it was just a very all-around beautiful ceremony. This is the current repatriation that we're doing right now. This is a Saanya Kwaan Teikweidi helmet. It's of a Thunderbird. And it's going back to the Hoots hit and the Hoots Cool hit. We have two gentlemen who share very respectfully their house leadership with each other. We have an older gentleman who is like around 85, 89 years old, Martin Perez Sr. and Charles Denny. They're the two house leaders, and they work very well with each other. And at first we thought this was a Nechadi hat because of the beak, and I thought it looked like an eagle. But then you could see the billowing feathers in the back, and it ended up being, we found out that it ended up being a Thunderbird. And this research was also pretty intense too, because, you know, the claim, or not the claim, the catalog records, you know, just basically states that it's an eagle hat collected by Mr. Ziegler in, what was it, 1956. And then when I started doing the research more, we found out, and I started asking around, please, help assist clan members if you have any pictures. Is there any Thunderbird crests in the Saanya Kwaan people? And lo and behold, the Martin Perez sister said, well, yeah, I have a Thunderbird blanket that my mother made for me in 1940. And there's where we made the connection. The hat really resembles the blanket. We do know who the hat belonged to. It belonged to George Kwaan. He was in the Ronald Olson notes, it states that he was the head leader of the Saanya Kwaan Teikweidi Hoots Kuwu Hit. And so right then and there, it reaffirms that that the hat did belong to a Teikweidi clan member. And we are now submitting this claim to the Denver Museum of Natural History, and hopefully it will come back soon. The repatriation process is a kind of a long process. And then another repatriation we have completed was the repatriation of Naha Charlie. This picture right here, I just had to explain just another little story. While we're doing these repatriations, it's not just that we're bringing back these items and they go back to their homes and back to their clan owners. A lot of information comes out when you're asking the elders, where the clan hats come from, and then just side notes, when I'm interviewing. In this particular case, I was interviewing Elizabeth Denny, and this tree is a cottonwood tree, and if you've ever been to Saxman, when you drive into Saxman, you see this beautiful, huge tree, and it has an eagle nest up in the tree. But she's always complaining about it because the wind is going to, she thinks that the wind is going to come and it's going to blow the tree down, and her house is right next to it. And I asked her, I said, well, goodness sakes, cottonwood is not a real native tree to the Keex.Kwaan area. Where did it come from? And she told me that her father-in-law had brought it from the Untitled River when the Cape Fox people had moved from Cape Fox to Saxman. The Untitled River was an area that the Saanya Kwaan Teikweidi owned, and they had brought this tree and planted this tree and another tree that's off by Louis Wagner's house. They planted 2 trees, and so that was a story I got from this tree, and I just had to let you guys know that the repatriation brings out all kinds of information and not just bringing the items back home. Well, we repatriated human remains of Chief Naha Charlie, and this is where I get into my internal policies. We've been doing repatriation since 1994. Anyways, we submitted a claim, and through the research, we found out that Chief Naha Charlie was born in 1804 and he died in 1912. He was NAGPRA clan, and he was the last of the NAGPRA clan. He was the last of that band of people, which is linked to my father's people, the NAGPRA clan. He was also the last of the Junach people, the Untitled River people. He was also the great-great-grandfather to Elizabeth Denny, and we repatriated him under lineal descent. And this case is a very, very unique situation, and in some cases it might be very sensitive, and I kind of debated whether or not I should share it, but this is what came of our internal policies, because when we submitted the claim several years ago to the Forest Service, they said, okay, we'll go ahead and repatriate, which was wonderful. We then started preparing the clan to receive their human remains to return back home so we could put him back in a mausoleum near Naha, and we then asked a carver to do a large bentwood box, because where Chief Naha had come from, he was put in a mausoleum, and he had 6 other relatives inside the mausoleum with him. He was buried at Naha, or placed in a mausoleum in Naha. The story behind him was he had originally come from the Unuk River. There was a big village at the mouth of the Unuk River, and he went away to his to a summer camp to hunt and fish. And when he returned back home, he had found that his whole entire village was dying of smallpox. And he went from house to house, and he burned every single house and the family members in it because of the smallpox disease. And then he moved back to Naha. So when we repatriated this, it didn't just have, human remains and no person, no name behind it. He actually had a history. He was the great-great-grandfather of some clan members in Saxman. And what had happened is, when we decided to actually go and retrieve their human remains, we were assured that the remains were where they were supposed to be, and we made travel arrangements, and we had the clan leader, along with other the agency's employees, go retrieve the remains. Well, when they went to the shelf to go get the remains weren't there. So then we were like, okay, well, now what do we do? This hasn't happened before. So then we requested, please help us, can you please search the whole entire facility? The clan was very respectful to the agency, and likewise back, the agency was very respectful to the clan. So then that led to a long letter from this agency explaining what might have happened to it, and we really couldn't find the remains. But then we also had a repatriation process in place. The whole NAGPRA was in full course. The repatriation right of possession was all placed in the Federal Register. So we then kept on searching and searching. The agency made their best effort to find other places that the human remains might be. And so then the agency came back to us and said, well, we might have repatriated the item back in 96 or 98, and unfortunately those remains were already reburied in a place on Prince of Wales. And so I was like, whoa, oh my goodness sakes, now what do I do? Because this is uncharted area. Nobody's, do you lose remains, and do you, now what do I do? I can't call people to say, please here, give me your advice on what to do. And I have called. I did call Tlingit, asked, suggestions. I talked to Harold about it. And so we started looking for these remains, and you know what? Thankfully, the clan was very, very respectful, and automatically, the elder, who is the great-great-granddaughter of Chief Naha, she said, we need to bring him home. He needs to go back home with the rest of his family, and he needs to be buried with his wife and his children back in the mausoleum. And I was like, oh my goodness, okay. Knowing that the agency said maybe he's in, we buried him in the ground, back in the 90s. So then I went back to the agency, and they said, well, we turned him over already we turned all the remains over to the another tribe. So they already went ahead, and they're buried. They've been buried for several years. And the tribe then gave us permission and they gave us permission to exhume the remains that were repatriated back in the 90s. And it was a hard situation for the clan. It was a hard situation for the family. But the agents, the tribe that gave us this permission understood that Chief Naha was the great-great-grandfather to somebody. He was the last of the Naha-Adi people. He was the last of the Junak people. He carried a rich history, and they knew that he needed to go back to his family. So we then went over to the area, and we dug up the box of the remains, and then we had a forensic anthropologist who was wonderful. We then started, handling the remains, and we started to try to find the bones that belonged to Chief Naha. And what made Chief Naha really unique is the forensic anthropologists believed that he was a taller man because of the bone structure. And so he started trying to place some of the bones and try to fit them together. Well, to this day, we tried to identify Chief Naha's remains. We can't find him. He wasn't inside the previous burials, and we can't find him. I don't know, if we will ever find the rest of his remains. But until then, we'll be seeking a closure from the agency so we could move on. And then from there, what we'll do is we'll probably get the bentwood box that we commissioned earlier. We'll go to the mausoleum, and we'll go ahead and clean up the mausoleum, because what had happened is the mausoleum had shelving. It had shelves in it. And since then, all of the shelves had fallen down, and we'll go ahead and clean up the mausoleum and put the rest of the family members respectfully back in the box and seal it. So this whole dramatic situation led to Cape Fox Corporation and Cape Fox Heritage Foundation to have internal policies, which I have a copy of right here. It's a handout, so I have 30 copies if people want copies, so they're right up here. What it led us to do is we have a resolution from the tribe and clan, because what had happened is the CEO of the corporation was like, oh my goodness sakes, all he's thinking of, CEO things, are you going to get in trouble? Is this going to cost us any money? Are we going to be sued? So he then, said, I would like you to make internal policies so that Cape Fox Corporation and Cape Fox Heritage Foundation is protected from lawsuits. So for those of you who are, or your tribe or ANC is looking to try to repatriate or go into NAGPRA, these are the policies that we had formed so that we could try to prevent some of these certain situations from happening. We have a resolution from the tribe, clan or Kwaan, and what I do is I go and ask the clan. I give them a draft of a resolution, and usually their clan leader or house leader signs. We find or rediscover clan artifacts. We do consultation, documentation, petition, right of possession, and repatriation. Whoops. Well, I don't know how to read. I guess I'll go back off them. And transfer property to clan. Common words, you've heard these common words earlier from Harold that identify clan property under NAGPRA. And mostly I put this in here because Cape Fox, we have CEOs, and sometimes management isn't necessarily a Native person. So what I tried to make the policy friendly reading to even a non-Native person who might not be aware of NAGPRA. So I included the NAGPRA common words. like I said earlier, we get a resolution from the tribe or clan granting permission to enforce NAGPRA. And then we have the tribal resolution. This is the resolution that I, as an employee, present to the board of directors so the board of directors can grant NAGPRA for the entity, for Keex Corporation. And that's the first steps that we take. We find or rediscover artifacts in museums or federal agencies. The first thing we do is identify the clan and clan crest, identify the clan and Kwaan history that pertains to the artifact. I included the 1900 census here, and some of the photographs are wonderful, and then all the research that goes behind it can help identify the clan and clan crest if your clan doesn't already know the history. And then we do consultation, which is contact the museum, request all documents and catalog records that artifact or that the museum has pertaining to that particular artifact. We contact the clan or Kwaan to inform them of the discoveries, and we do correspondence required if needed for special care or restrictions, because sometimes you can find an object in the museum, and from there on we'll then write a letter saying, we will have no other clan possibly view the item, or no women shall view this item. So there might be some special restrictions. We haven't had, in our repatriations, we haven't had any special restrictions from some of the property. But and consultation always takes place throughout the whole entire repatriation process, from the time that we find an object to the time that the object comes home. And that's consultation with the museum, that's consultation with the tribe, which is Keex Corporation, and the clan. And that's regular clan meetings. I will call a particular clan if I know that a hat is coming home and it belongs to the Kainai. I will call the Kainai clan leader, and then he calls the rest of his clan members, and then we meet at the corporate office and we go over details. We go over whatever research we have found, and these are also wonderful meetings, too, when we meet with the clan, because they reminisce about, old times, and they start talking about, when they were younger and what they remember. And, of course, I write all that down and document that, which leads to the documentation. We research the history needed for the actual petition of claims for the particular artifact. And this sometimes, for us, has been very intense, because this research part has led Keex Corporation to travel to Philadelphia to the Presbyterian Mission archives. And for the northern people, the Russian Orthodox, or the Russian people were in this area. For the southern, it was Presbyterian and Salvation Army. So we had the missionaries wrote very detailed notes of Saxman and Keex and Tongass. Some of the people were very young. The missionaries were very young, so they were out in Alaska in the early, like in 1900s. And they were very excited to do their job, and so they wrote very detailed notes. So we then went to Philadelphia to get those, physically went there and went through their archives, Library of Congress, goodness sakes, Smithsonian had a lot of good stuff, and of course the Washington Press. And so we took extensive research tools to try to get some information for some of these objects that had left our area. Supporting documents, and that could be oral history, interviews. Keex recently received a donation of 28 tapes, which I'm so happy to say, if we only would have got that information like 14 years ago. We recently got a donation of 28 tapes about a month and a half ago, and it's one of our elders talking all in Tlingit. She was lived to be 104 years old, and she did the recordings in 1976, 1978. And so we do use tapes to help in the supporting documents for a repatriation claim. And then, of course, we obtain the museum records, catalog records for the initial petition of claims, and then also the consultation. Petition of claims, right of possession, we compile all the information together, all the research. Then we write this huge, well, I feel it's huge. My last claim, or the current claim that we're submitting to the Denver Museum, is 22 pages long, and that's not even including the supporting documents. Huge. I feel like I'm writing for forever. But anyways, we then include the supporting documents, the resolutions from tribes, and then submit the claim to the federal agency. The repatriation process, that's the next step. We do the consultation. We secure a location for the artifacts, long-term, short-term, storage or exhibit for the final location. And this is after we submitted the claim and the museum is, we're in consultation. This is the repatriation process of the whole NAGPRA. We draft a memo between the clan, the tribe, the entity holding the artifact regard to long-term, short-term, exhibit, or permanent final location. If the item is going to go into a museum, when an object returns home, it does not belong to Cape Fox Corporation, or does it belong to the Heritage Foundation. We let the clan fully decide that on their own, what they want to do. In most cases, they'll say when it comes home, we want it to be put in a museum. With the big repatriation that we did with all the totem poles, those are currently in a, what are they called, connexes, the big, what are AML containers? What are they, like 40 feet long? We have some of those, or the totem poles are being stored in those connexes. Waiting for the completion of our community hall in Saxman, and hopefully we'll be able to get a museum here shortly in the next 5 to 10 years. So it's awaiting, some of those items are waiting to go into those facilities. So this part is really critical too, because when we meet with the clan, I want them to fully understand that Cape Fox is not the caretaker of the items, that it's up to the clan on where they want to store the items and who wants to hold them. And then, of course, we write the petition, send the petition to museum. We have the 30 days for the museum to respond. And then from there, the museum will, say their determination, the right of possession, and then we confirm the Federal Register and get the official document. And this is just to later on in the process for the grant. Submit the repatriation grant upon the Federal Register notice. Assure the artifact is secure in current location before the actual repatriation. This is what step we did not do in the repatriation of Naha Charlie. And I think if we were to have followed these steps, we wouldn't have been through that dramatic process of not being able to find our ancestor. We repair the official transfer of control document from museum to tribe, or it's not, it was we, because when we did the repatriation for the Chicago Field Museum Human Remains, the museum was in consultation with Cape Fox, and we went over that diligently, how we wanted the words to sound in the transfer document, who the items go to. And then we have the option to travel to retrieve the item and the repatriation grant confirmation. And then we transfer the artifact from long-term to short-term, permanent location, and then Cape Fox Corporation then has our own transfer document, because what happened in the big repatriation process is that we repatriated, all the totem poles, the house, and then things were just kind of left in our care. It didn't get transferred out of our care, so then we had some concern with the clan members saying, where's the item at? And then the CEO, who's then looking out for the corporation and its liabilities, then said, well, Irene, I would really like for when you do a repatriation, I want it out of our hands within 30 days. Which is great. It wasn't like we were trying to hold on to it. It just kind of, what do you do with a 42-foot totem pole? You can't just put it in front of somebody's house, or you can't just go sit in front of the corporation office or the Heritage Foundation office, and, it can't be erected because it's so fragile. So we then made our own transfer out of control document, and we have that done within 30 days of the object returning home, not from when the museum decides to do the repatriation and, gave us the final notice. We actually set up we'll call the museum and say, well, we can't be there for a year to retrieve the object, so can you hold the object until the clan members are able to travel back to Chicago? And this just helped, so where we know definitely that the object goes from the tribe, Cape Fox Corporation, to the clan. And then we have the 3 original transfer documents, one for the corporation, the Heritage Foundation, and original to the clan. And let me see. That is about all. And the internal policies I have right here. So if anybody would like to take a copy, you're more than welcome to. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to ask me. I guess this isn't the time, but I'll be around here for the rest of the day. Thank you.
Working on repatriation has been one of the Actually, it's been the best job I've ever had and worked on, or I still wouldn't be working there. It's been 11 years now. Seeing objects, walking into museums and seeing cases and cases of objects, and knowing maybe it's been decades or more decades and decades since they've heard our language. So when we do museum visits to look at these collections, we don't just go in there and open the drawers and start looking through the objects and pulling them out and handling them. We speak to them before we enter the room, that we've heard their cry from a long way and we've come for them, and ask them to reveal their faces to us. Then we enter the room, and every trip is similar, yet every trip is different. Every time I go on a trip, I wish I could take the same group on every trip, but they work out well. At the last clan conference, I'm gonna say this because the tape is running. At the last clan conference, we returned 3 objects to Wrangell. They were 3 shaman objects. We did not know what the name of the shaman was, what the clan they came from, just that they were collected in the Wrangell area. I'll say this because my dad and his family used to go to a fish camp north of Sitka. The name of the camp was Watatin. It was in Hoonah Sound, at the mouth of Hoonah Sound, and at the mouth of the big creek is a rock, and that's what the name means, Watatin. And this is where he grew up. Well, one morning, my Uncle Ernie came into camp and he was carrying a bentwood box. And his grandma asked him, "Where did you get that?" And he pointed to the island out there. And she told him, "Take it back. Put it back where you found it." And he rode back out there. The next morning, when they woke up, that bentwood box was floating in front of the camp. And my great-grandma asked my uncle, "Did you put it back exactly where you found it?" He said no. And she made him take it back out and put it in the exact spot she found it. This is the problem we have with things regarding human remains or objects, not human remains necessarily, but shaman objects, is they have to go back to the spot where they came from. They just can't handle them any old way and put them in the ground, and they don't belong in the ground, really. But how many of you were at the last clan conference when those objects were brought out? Okay. I have some people who are constantly fighting me, working against me, trying to undermine me. And a couple of weeks after this conference, word came back from Juneau to New York to DC to Boston, back to me, that Harold Jacobs had brought out human remains and offended everybody at the conference. Did anybody see that at the last conference? I'll keep going on this. Sometimes I want to say, "You know how to do it? Take it over." But then what would we do? What would we do? We can't do that. There's so much in these objects and everybody that goes on these trips who's connected to these objects. I heard we need to work with everybody, even if they don't want to work with me. I've had somebody say, "If he's going to be there, I'm not going to the conference." Fine, stay home. I'm going to go to the conference. If you're there, I'm still going to come. I don't have time for that. We got to keep moving on this. This repatriation law was passed in 1990. I often wonder what it would have been like if it had been passed 20 years earlier, 1970. When some of these, that probably would have prevented the loss of a lot of our items in the 1970s. And some of these people that were alive in 1970, 71, they would have known some of these objects that had left in 1910s and the 1920s, maybe even 1900 or in the 1890s. They would have seen them when they were small, and the stories these people could have told. And you look at the pictures from the first clan conference. In 1993, and see all the people who are gone and the wealth of information they had and what we could have had and learned from these people who are no longer with us. We have them on, some of them on tape, but I like the words of one old man who said, "Ask me the questions now, because when I'm gone, you can't come to my grave and ask me." He died in 1986. They have a lot of recordings of him, but I still think, I wish I would have asked him this. Wish I would have asked him that. I wish I would have asked him about the hats and pictures that I had, because he was born in 1891 and saw those hats when they were still in Tlingit hands. To date, we have received 135 objects back under repatriation. This is both under the National Museum of the American Indian Act and also the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. Say that all in one breath. We use family trees. We use songs. We use oral history. Some of you were in the session yesterday with the clan leaders. And this leads into this and working with these claims. So many of these photographs have clan leaders wearing objects. Like this photo that's on the screen right now is of the Sik'nax.adi, and is there a laser pointer in here?
Yeah.
The Sik'nax.adi in Sitka in December 1904. This was in front of the wolf house that was called Uchit, the wolf house. It was also called Tlingit, the world house, and it was also called Anyadi, the noble house. I don't see
Try
any.
this one.
There we go. I only have a couple people identified in here. This one is George Shotridge, the father of Louis Shotridge, wearing a frog hat that's now in the Portland Art Museum. This is in the Portland Art Museum. This is in the University Museum in Pennsylvania. This is in a private collection in New York. This is in a private collection. This is still in the clan, hands of the clan. The head of the Keex.Kwaan, Andy Gamble, is the caretaker of this, and this is on loan to the Sitka National Historical Park. We use these photos along with oral history and the songs, if we have them, for the objects. A couple times we've been able to tell the history of the object and have the song done right there in the museum for the object. Then we slide the drum over to the museum and say, now tell us your history and sing your song for the object. Of course, all they have is their paperwork from when they obtained the object, and they certainly don't have the song. So that determines right of possession. Right of possession is a major component of NAGPRA. Most museums are very cooperative. We've had a couple museums that have been hard to deal with. One is the Denver Art Museum, which has a Chilkat shirt, which we've been trying to return to the Sik'nax.adi, and they bring up ridiculous questions, and when we finally get that settled and squared away and our information as needed, they ask another question. Well, I had an interesting feedback yesterday. I think it was Nora or Florence. I told them about that. Their next question was, why did the person sell it? And she said, we should ask them, why did they buy it? Well, that's going to be one of our questions. You can go to another picture. This was the first object repatriated to the clan. I am the caretaker of this. This is sitting next to a dog salmon hat. When my uncle's wife passed away, they brought out their hat and we put ours beside it to show that we were standing behind them in the time of death. Also, this is one of our clan members who had died, and the Ishkatan brought out their hat, the Skayakyeksach, the box of daylight, which is sitting behind it. This is actually the only item out of this picture that we have in clan hands now. I heard remarks coming back to me yesterday that I was adopted, that my mother was adopted. And if people are saying this, I wish they would come to me and leave my mother out of it. I'm going to say that again. I know who my mother is. I know who her mother is. My mother was almost 3 years old when her mother died. There was a woman that lived in Sitka, that lives in Sitka, who still knows my mom, and just recently told her how she used to push her buggy by, and with her kid in it and talked to my grandmother. My grandmother, Costine, which is the same name my mother has. Her mother's name was Sik'nax.adi. Sik'nax had a brother named Teikweidi, who was the caretaker of the hat. I have a picture of him wearing the hat. I know who I am, and from now on, when I hear somebody telling me or hearing I'm adopted, I'm going to that person and confront them and ask them where they got this information, because I know who I am. When I graduated from high school in 1982, I thought about college. I even thought about the Navy, wondering if I should join the Navy, and my dad was in the Navy, his brothers were in the Navy, my brother was in the Navy. And all I could think about was hearing my brother talk about boot camp, and I think I probably would have lasted about 10 seconds with some drill sergeant hollering in my face. But in the time in high school and afterwards, I spent a lot of time in Angoon and talking with so many elders who are gone now. And growing up in junior high, I remember visiting elders and in high school. And some of these stories that I've heard, I kept to myself in dancing styles. And now I'm getting accused of making up things and fabricating things, and he's not telling it right. 3 weeks ago, I was in California at the University of California, Berkeley. And I went to the library there, and I was looking through notes of an anthropologist that had written stories in the 1930s in Keex.Kwaan and Sitka and Klawak, recorded family trees. And there were the stories that I had heard when I was growing up, and this person had recorded them. So maybe he's lying too and fabricating the things that he wrote in the 1930s. It was amazing information knowing part B and looking at him having part B, A, and putting the puzzle together, or the same stories I had heard. I don't like revisionist history. You cannot make up things. When you tell a story, it's going to be recorded, like I mentioned in another session about an anthropologist not even asking anybody about a picture of a man wearing a chocat shirt, and she called it a bison. Well, it's a cow shirt. It's a man wearing a chocat shirt, and the shirt depicts a cow. The clan had built a house, and they didn't have a door on it. They covered it with a cowhide. And one of the young men of the clan made a comment that they should just call it the cow house. So they named it the cow house. And that cow, and a cow with, it was an American cow on there. And the clan still has that shirt. But with her remarks on there, it said, depicting a bison, probably from interior days. She didn't ask anybody. She didn't go to anybody to question what this was, what the image was, who had it. She just made suppositions, and now it's in a book. And I had a Tlingit man come to me and say, you know, there's a bison clan? I said, no, there isn't. Yeah, there is. I saw it in the book. So now it's in a book, and it's the gospel truth. Or is it? You can do another slide. We were going to address here quickly the repatriation of some objects, but there's a respect in the return of these objects. We don't just handle them any old way. We use the word, it's something that's handled a certain way. This is the way we treat these items, and Bob is going to address this with the respectful treatment of those who came before us, which will lead into the repatriation, the showing of these objects that we are bringing out.
This morning I'm going to be very brief. I am a caretaker, a simple caretaker. I restore cemeteries, clean headstones, visit our ancestors, make sure that they're treated with dignity and respect. It's work that I've been doing my whole life. It goes all the way back to Rice Sunday, 1 week after Easter. We would go up to the cemetery and clean the graves and have kind of a picnic up there. So I've been kind of groomed to do this kind of work my whole life. And 1983, it was actually Andy Hope that got me interested in this work when some of the graves in Sitka were disturbed by development interests. And I'm saying this rather kindly. 1986, they built some new homes. And this construction company destroyed the whole place, the whole cemetery. And I saw body parts all over the place. It brought tears to my eyes. I never experienced such a thing. So I picked up those body parts and put them in boxes and took them to the church because I didn't know what to do. But eventually they have to get reburied. So we started doing reburial ceremonies. And I was fortunate that there were many elders around that helped me rebury these human remains of our people. And I became kind of an expert. It's not easy to handle human remains. It changes your life. And oftentimes it's very, very difficult work. And I'm doing the best I can to be respectful here now, because it's a very sensitive subject. Picking up those headstones and restoring headstones, it's like washing the faces of the descendants. It's like washing their feet. That's how special it is. And growing up in Sitka, I was told, before you honor somebody, before you even mention their name in public, you should go clean their grave. Put flowers on their grave. That's an old custom that goes back a long ways. And I really encourage us to get back to that custom. Our ancestors are tangible connection to who we are. And these burial places are so special. 25 years of cleaning headstones, restoring cemeteries. I never thought there would be an end to it. It was like purgatory. But before I came to this clan conference, I restored the last headstone because I wanted to do it for you so that your life can be more healthy. If we take care of our ancestors, we become a better people. I believe in that. And then I also found burial caves out on the Tongass National Forest. Places that were disturbed by people, even kids. We walk by these places every single day. And some of these graves are of our ancient people. And they get disturbed. I was told, don't go in there. It's taboo. Stay away. Don't touch them. Don't touch anything. But they get disturbed from time to time. And oftentimes the elders would call me and they'd say, please help them. So I had to sacrifice myself, pick up them skulls, crawl back into the cave. And in there, I wondered if I was doing the right thing. I wondered if my hair was going to fall out, my teeth were going to fall out, my health was going to fail. But if you think like that, you shouldn't have gone in there. So I had to take a whole different approach. I had to feel that I was doing the right thing. And what I did was place those things back in there. And we're not like lower 48 American Indians where we burn sage and sweetgrass and talk to the four directions. We're not like that. So I burn oftentimes incense or red cedar or something. And I pray. And I talk to the bodies. When I place them back in there, I say, don't follow me home. Go back to the spirit world. Go at rest. And then I remove the human scent. All footprints. I plant different kinds of indigenous plants around it, and I make sure it looks like nature. Nature is the best caretaker. We can't go out there every single day to watch them. So I allow nature to take care of these ancient places. And then I got a phone call in California. They wanted me to do the closing ceremony for a man named Ishi. They asked me to do that because right next to Ishi were some bodies from Sitka, Angoon, Heidelberg, all sitting next to each other. And we brought the young man home from Sitka a few years ago, and I reburied him. This is the hardest work of my life. But it has its benefits. Because our culture is growing, our customs are coming back, we are in a Renaissance time, the art form is coming back, and our ancient objects are coming back. This is the most exciting time of our history right now in this room. with the objects over in the corner. I even had the opportunity to bury a man that died 10,000 years ago. The On Your Knees Cave man. That was one of the biggest honors I've ever received. We did it privately. Very few people know where this man is, and we don't say anything. I don't do this to sit up here and make myself look good. I do it because it's service work. If you do service work for the people, you're a good man. I want to thank Andy Hope for introducing me to this work and making me the man that I am today. And to be able to talk about it in a good way, with a good voice, with pride and dignity and humility. I've buried a lot of people in my time, people from all over Alaska. And I will continue doing this work for the rest of my life, because nobody else is doing it. We have to take care of our ancient people. It's our duty and responsibility. And somebody has to go into those caves, into those forests. I heard the term, walking into the forest. But somebody has to walk with them. Somebody has to carry them, place them in the ground, talk to them, sing to them. Somebody has to do it. I respect Harold for what he does, and I want to thank him for what he does for the objects. But I want to say that the original intent of NAGPRA was to bring our ancestors home who were placed on display in museums. That was the original intent. So I don't want to lose sight of that, and I want to stress how important it is to continue to do that. So I don't worry too much about the objects. When we have people like Irene, thank you Irene, Harold, thank you for what you do. But I'm going to finish what I set out to do. There's 13,000 human remains in Berkeley, 3,000 in San Francisco. In places like the Smithsonian, even though they're starting to come home, there's still thousands of our people out there. And the more we bring them home, the better we are as a people. I hope that I did this with dignity and respect, because it's a subject that's very difficult to talk about in public. What I do is sensitive. So I want to thank you for allowing me this brief time to talk about my work. Thank you, Harold.
I had been working on family trees, and one of the things Andy Hope had me do was do his family tree. So I wound up doing more family trees from different communities in Angoon, Haines, Keex, Wrangell, Keex.Kwaan, the Shotridge family tree, Taku, which is my area, Tonga, Sitka houses, the Ppt family, Klawak, Huna. One of the trees I worked on was for Andy Hope, which was in the Point House, but this is Andy Hope's connection to Taku. Andy pulled my fat out of the fire so many times, even when especially in times when I didn't have work, and he had called me just at the right time and asked me to do a job for him working on clan projects. And he gave me these notes one day that showed his family trees, and this is one of his family trees here that has 12 generations on it. This is Andy's grandparents here, Andrew and Tilly, and her parents, Lottie and George, and Lottie's parents, Onkaskuch and Yayi Taudaskain. Onkaskuch, his mother goes to Yeshnau. His father is Yeshnau, whose father was Yunyedi. So I use a lot of these trees in our repatriation claims to show connections to the objects. I'll show you something else here that Andy had me work on that has been ongoing now for about 13 years. This is my line, which is my niece and nephews and my sister. I'm here at the end, my mother, down to her mother, Maxine, whose mother was Ruth. There was 7 sisters there that we didn't have we don't have the names for. The brothers, and then the grandparents, and further back. Andy kept me going on this a lot. And the other thing that Andy got me going on was the memorial calendars, which listed the parties. And this also led into printing out how memorials run, what happens during a memorial, the name of the sections in a memorial, and then listing the parties if the clan wants it, if the family wants it listed. The family trees really help in the matrilineal line because we claim objects matrilineally. We don't claim our father's objects. We don't claim our grandfather's objects. We don't claim our great-grandfather's objects. It's a matrilineal descent. Sometimes in going through museum records, we have names listed, and sometimes you can figure out the names, and here I have lists of clan names from the Thunderbird clan, the Deshitan, Ganach.adi, Kach.adi, Kayashkiditan, Teikweidi, Keex.Kwaan, Sik'nax.adi, Nanyai, Keex.adi names, place names, Teikweidi names, and we use these in researching whatever material we can get from museums or written sources. Bob was talking about respect, and I'll have to say I was a little angry yesterday after that session when I heard the comments about me being adopted. So I had to get rid of that, getting ready for today's session, because I couldn't come here like that doing what we have to do today. It's like Bob said, if you're going to have those feelings, don't attempt something. So those feelings are gone. I just had to comment on it. I had been taking clan leaders on these trips. And in my situation, I'll say I've heard more than once of older people or older clan leaders saying, what are these young people doing? Why are they involved? What are they doing? Trying to shove us out of the way? No, we're not trying to shove anybody out of the way. But this is how we learn, is being involved in things. I was at a party a couple of years ago, and a young man was going to wear one of the clan hats. And we were standing there helping him, and we asked him, who do you want to put the hat on you? We were expecting him to say one of the people at the head table. And he pointed to one of his friends off to the side. Well, it happened to be his grandfather's clan, and I could see all of us, including me, I felt it. I bristled. Why him? Those people are sitting up there. Then I relaxed. I thought, got to learn somehow. So we talked to him, and we brought the other guy over, and we told him what to say when he put the hat on him. This is a learning process. You can't sit in the college doing this. You can't sit really in sessions like this. We can talk about it, but this is what we tell museums as well. We can talk about it, we can write about it until we're blue in the face. But until you see these objects in motion and how they're supposed to be used, you will never understand it. This is why we've been inviting museums to bring objects to parties, or even just attend the parties, so they can see these objects in motion and the way they're intended to be used. On this last trip to the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, we had 8 people go along. I went along as the cultural resource specialist for Tlingit and Haida, and we returned 3 objects. 2 are from the Keex.Kwaan in Keex.Kwaan, and 1 is from the Eagle Nest House in Sitka. The lineal descendant is known. Her granddaughter is sitting out here, I hope. Is Evelyn here? Evelyn? Okay, I see you. The Denver Museum of Nature and Science has returned a number of objects now to the Teikweidi, to the Sik'nax.adi, to the Deshitan and Nanyai. And Irene was just talking about a claim they have prepared for them, and these were 3 more objects we picked up last week. So we would like to show these objects and show you what we're doing. And I'll ask Smith Katsik and Evelyn to come up here and how we want to proceed with this and bring the box out here. Who you want to bring the box out and bring these out? For those of you other clans who brought objects and want to put them out or use them now, it's up to you. Edwell in here? Ben? The other objects are in back too, sitting by the wall. Did the ceremony before we entered the room. And they were worn during the ceremony. I should have brought the slides from that next conference. And the opposite side was used to dress up the people with these objects. And then when they brought them out of the storage room when we were going to transfer them, 2 Eagle side members carried the objects from there to where we were going to transfer them, and 1 Raven carried the Eagle side object. So we handled these appropriately all the way back. We know how these objects carry this. When we look at them, we see the people that used to stand in these objects. Like I said earlier, when I see my dad's objects out, I see my dad standing there. When I see the Chilkat shirt out, I see my grandfather. There's other items people see that when they see them, they see their relatives who are gone, who used to stand in these objects. So we'll bring these objects out now. Is the trunk here?
Gurtakusho. With a go, I'll go hide it. The crew on had koto at Nea Hajis, Kawaksi, Pistane, Hewa, Ganchish. This was a very kind of a sad moment for me, and yet a happy moment. There was an item there that belonged to my mother. When they first showed it to us, I told these people that went with us, it's like my mother was standing beside me when I was looking at it. There was a feeling there that nobody will ever experience but me. She was there. Just like when I was a little boy, she used to hold my hand. And that's what I felt that day. People say there's nothing to artifacts. I am one that believes that the people that own these precious things are still there. I have a good friend of mine that's a very good witness to that fact. I won't mention any names, and I won't say much more about it, except that I thank Harold for the opportunity to go with him to repatriate these items. It may be my last trip going to do something like this, where maybe it will come around where I can do another one. So I'll turn it back over to Harold.
Let me say something before I begin. Nyatkwasane, Yatikene, Nyatkitik, Kwaan, Gunalchish. You are the descendants of dignitaries, is what I said. You are just not a person, you are a descendant of very powerful people. Ya ichis khawqshike qasaneat akhsane khit khsuusiti ya ishaya akhyat qliujin kik ekhadanus qech hujaya khawqshike qatiya atakhatoti kunalchish. Which one is it?
This one.
Show this to you. We do have a word in Tlingit for repatriation. I don't think I've heard it. Koktaya kandahin. It's moving back home. When it gets home, it'll be kakodiya. That's what the words will be in Tlingit.
Put it on the table or put it right here.
Ach silku tank ach nat kachi achqua.
Has Hatchaya NAGPRA Sunny James King Jaya NAGPRA Sunny Iku Ikisko Gonna Chisa Hatisai Eat Kadashid. I thank you for asking me and giving me the honor to put this blanket on you so you could show it off. Her grandmother was a good old friend of all of us. All our elders that lived in Keex.Kwaan, whether they were eagle, raven, wolf. During my time when we were growing up, they were all grandma, grandpa. There was no limit to where we went. Right now, I am very proud that these things are happening. And I believe it's going to go on happening. I heard stories before. I can't tell them, but I want to thank you, Evelyn, for letting me do this.
Ach si ayal kaujil. Ach datchan bonet. Ho aya akako atina go. Twasi coconut cheese ach sakai. So tu ya ke.
Can you hold that blanket up? This blanket is called Tlingit.adi. It means the blanket above all others. This belonged to Evelyn's grandmother, Annie Clarney. Her father was Sitka Jack, who was from the whale house in Sitka. He was Sik'nax.adi. The father of Sitka Jack, I found out last year, was a brother to Kadena from Joe Hotch's house. So Annie Clarney was a grandchild of the bear house. Laura Hotch was also a Keex.Kwaan grandchild. And Evelyn is her own grandchild. I call that Keex.Kwaan. Your same clan as your grandfather. This is what Smith is. It's what Joe Hotch is. It's what Nora Dauenhauer is and Ray Dennis. When I was talking yesterday about adoptions, I also heard comments that Harold's trying to make some people A class and B class and non-citizens and different classes of people. How many of you know Tlingit had a caste system? There was Anyadi, Keex.Kwaan, the commoners. There was the low-class people. And there were slaves who had no class at all. I didn't start that system, and I'm not determining who is that. But these blankets were worn usually only by those of the upper caste system. And I mentioned these people. I'm not just leaving everybody out, but I wanted to mention these people were Keex.Kwaan, Anyatke, Hasawa. These are the people that you would see wearing these blankets, and I would have to say an adopted person would not wear this kind of blanket. And there are more objects coming back, but I know there's a couple clans here who want to say something about these objects, so I'll leave this open for anyone who wants to comment from the other clans on this.
For those who want to comment, we'd like to encourage you to come up to the microphone. We're recording this on the video, and we really want to capture all your words. And also, please identify yourself so if for future generations we'll know who you are. Ben?
I'd like all the Teikweidi clan members to come up and stand with me, please. And just to clarify, I may be standing up here acting like a clan leader, but I'm not a clan leader. I'm a spokesman for the Teikweidi. Just to clarify that. I had the honor of going on this trip as well with my my family, really, and they're Sik'nax.adi, my cousins, but also I'm from Keex.Kwaan, the Kilowell Dorsal Friend House, so I'm their father and their grandfather too. So it was an honor to be there and witness, in essence, your mother and your grandmother's things coming back to you, and an honor to escort them to Juneau. And so on behalf of the Teikweidi, I want to set our dagger out to brace these new objects that have come back home to you. I really appreciate my family and their endeavors with this, and that when they see that hairpiece of their mothers, that they'll think of their mother, but also their father too at the same time, and that it'll bring them joy. Ganesh. Also, we're going to put out the killer whale hat too for these objects. But also, you know, we even have my family, my direct family, my sister Anne and my niece Janice have ties to the Keex.Kwaan of Keex.Kwaan through our grandfather. So we're great-grandchildren of the Keex.Kwaan. So I feel as though we're helping brace them as well. Ganesh.
While they're standing there, I want to comment on this hat and dagger. These were repatriated as well and are now back in ceremonial clan use. There's a blanket there too, the bottom blanket, that was also repatriated. This blanket, the dagger, and the headdress that's still in back there all show up in one photo taken around 1880 in Angoon. Well, this blanket's about 120 years old. So all these objects are being returned back into ceremonial use. You'll see some of these out at times, and I know of one object that came back and they put it in a case and said it'll never be used again. I thought, oh, well, why bring it back? You should have left it in the museum. We need these objects in our ongoing ceremonies, and this is why we're bringing these out so they can see that these are back in ceremonial use. I've even heard the comment made that Harold is keeping all the objects he brings back, and they're all keeping them all in his house. I wish. No, I don't wish.
These objects that I've brought out that are killer whale were masterless for a long time, and now really Edwell John, is he in here? He is the main caretaker for these objects that were Mark Jacobs at one time, and I've had the honor of wearing them for many years. And most of them were repatriated, and it was by Mark's diligence in getting these things back to the clan. And so I caretake those as well and bring them out when I can. So I'm glad they're here to help brace my relatives. Goodness cheesh.
Anyone else want to say something?
I think this is has been a real honor bestowed upon us, all of us, who come from the inland, and to see what is happening here. We too had repatriation back in our village of objects that were taken away, and we had to go down and get these objects. We had a balance of the wolf and the crow to go receive this, and we had a big party for this. And to see this it's a testimony that all the things that we've had in our care years ago is still out there, and we need to search for them. And I personally want to thank all of you that have done this work on behalf of the clans. Goodness cheese, Harold, you and your group, and I don't know all their names, but I think this is a wonderful event that we're able to watch. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce the late Edwell John.
Apologize. I was scheduled to teach next door too. When something comes back, it means so much to us. It's not just a shirt, it's not just a hat, it's not just a piece of material that was woven. It's much more than that to us. I was telling my wife yesterday about repatriation, talking to her about it. And I used the analogy, my son is 2. I love him very much. And when I was talking about repatriation, and when a clan receives objects back, how important it is to them. So very important. Such a happy time. And getting back to when I was talking to my wife about my son, I put something out there and said, what if something happened to my son? It would be hard for me. Right now he plays with cars. He loves cars. And I said, what if something happened to my son and somebody took those little cars that my son played with away? For whatever reason, it's gone out of the country. And then 15, 20 years later, I saw those little cars again. I would break down crying because what it meant to me I would be so happy to receive that back. And when you receive something back, it means so much to you. Here's another analogy I used. I used this when we received a t'uu back after so many years. I traveled with Mark Jacobs and Matthew Fred, Joe Bennett, Harold, to many of the museums to get some of our t'uu back. And one of the analogies I used while we were there, I was in the military 21 years, and you see on the news all the time, we want to get our people back when they're in wars from Vietnam. And it's so important to us when we get our people back. People are crying, they're happy, they're sad. That's the analogy I like to use when your loved one comes back from being gone in a war and you finally get to bury your loved one, or you finally get them back. That means so much to you. I'm sure this is how you feel when you receive something back that's been gone so long. You're happy. You're sad. Teikweidi is here with you today. Chish.
Is Bill Martin still here? Or if you can hear me out in the lobby, if Bill Martin is out there, please come in here. I saw one of the vice presidents from Tlingit here too. Is she still here? Is Desiree Duncan here? Sit down. Well, we have eagles up here. Is there anybody else? Oh, Richard. Our president must have had to take off. So right in the middle of this, while we're talking here, I just have Richard stand up here. Richard is one of the vice presidents of Tlingit. While we have the eagles up here, are there any more eagles who want to speak before we stop speaking? Any? Joe, you want to say any more? Okay, we're done.
Are there any Sik'nax.adi in the building? If you're here, make your way into the third room. Any of you got pictures, go ahead, you can take them now. While we wait. It looks like we're all here. Ach ish has Teikweidi, ach at has Teikweidi, ach lis Chuk'naidi, has go has Keex.Kwaan, has go has Teikweidi, has go has Shangu.adi. Goodness cheesh for what we get to see today. We see the joy that has come upon each of your faces, our relatives who have received some items to come home. My aunt and I are holding two the items that we had just had repatriated in the past year from the same place that these items were at. So it seems as if it is fitting that it was to be brought back out during this time to welcome these items that seemingly went on a vacation together and went and talked about us Tlingit people and now have made their return back home. The Eagle Nest House, we're happy for you. We're very glad that you have brought your item here. We have the Yeshada. We also have the Tlingit Kudas. This particular hat, it is a duplicate of an original hat. It belonged to my namesake, Keex.Kwaan, Jack David, before him, John Mark. In the Sik'nax.adi, these are precious items to us, just as precious as these are to our brothers, the Sik'nax.adi, and to our grandparents, the Keex.Kwaan. It's an honor that we Tlingit people, we Sik'nax.adi, we get to celebrate with you. If my legs were just a little younger, I'd dance because of how happy it is to see our relatives coming home. So we'll put the shirt and the tunic alongside our grandfathers just to help them feel at home again. In the Chilkat Valley, we're celebrating our policiez for giving us just a little time, and we're very honored to witness our relatives in their joy in the return of their items. Yewa. I was almost done. I need to sound like my aunt now.
Thank you all. It's an honor to stand here and welcome the Keex.Kwaan artifact. I have to talk in Tlingit. Hatis Oz. Ya anu tuan nakik utas. James Sik'nax.adi aya Denver Museum Yahuatin Harold Joe Hauho ayayado atso Chushuko Keex.Kwaan aya Jack David Kagwantanya Dirksatin Yat akakat katsewok aktu ish. Aya Gunalchish ay Harold.
Do you all understand? Before I hand the microphone back to our moderator, I want to thank you for the work that you do on behalf of the Tlingit people. Where's our brother Bob? I want to thank you and encourage you, my brother, to continue your work. This little raven will always stand next to you. This little raven will always help support you. I just wanted you to know that. Goodness, cheesh for what you do. You're always in my prayers, both of you. Yeah, well. Let's go put this over there.
I'm going to ask one of our vice presidents to come out here to close this part for us. This is Richard George.
I'd like to also lend our support from the Sik'nax.adi. I'd like to have my younger brother Greg Littlefield Jr. come forward just to stand in support. I think my sister Kathy is not here, and if there are any others that are Nanai, Andy, you're a Keex.Kwaan, so but thank you. Carol Brady, just if you want to stand with us, that's fine, but if you'd like to sit there, that's fine too. I'm just going to make this very brief. I didn't bring Brother Andy's hat, and I didn't bring his blanket. We're not going to bring those out till the one-year memorial. And that's going to be in Sitka at the A&B Hall, Camp Number 1, on November 7th. We're going to include Jonathan DeWitt in that memorial in Sitka. But his hat and his heart are here in support. And we just wanted to say that we share that with you with all our love. Thank you, Greg.
Under repatriation, we're required to go through federally recognized tribes. So Tlingit is just the go-between. She asked if she could come up and talk. Does she expect me to say no? And we get these objects back into the clan hands as fast as we can. This is within a week we're doing this. Or a week, yeah, within a week. There are only a few items that we have in Tlingit possession that we don't know which clans they belong to. They're not on exhibit. There were shaman objects that we wanted off exhibit and out of the museum. But these do belong to the clans. The tribe has no business business hanging on to these objects. They are clan owned. And this is where they go back to. The tribe does not have the say-so on who they go to. The tribe does not dictate when they have a party. The tribe does not dictate who has the party or who is invited. We are merely the go-between, but this is a federal requirement. So before I have Richard George speak on behalf of Tlingit and Haida, we'll have these two who want to speak. Yes, you can speak.
Is there any more of our family out there? Please come and support us. To Bob and to Harold. They're really doing good work. I really am in support of their work because our grandmother, she was living in Dayi, Deshuku. Aoe du yetke du hasu art dog oni statin. I can't imagine how anybody would feel when they lose their babies. I am a mother of 5 children. They moved into the interior when that happened. Grandma was from this country. And they built a spirit house for the babies. And then there was other people there too. And it's funny that my mom and I went down there to visit one time in the early 80s. And we were looking for that house because her and my aunt were there to see that house before. That house was a Deshitan house, and there was other people in that house besides my grandma's babies. Her aunties had 2 babies in there, and one of her boys was one of the boys that was on the Bonanza Creek, and he was put in that spirit house too. I just wondered to myself, how could the boards be saved from that house when it fell down? We found the boards under a tree, and then we found a little spot close to those boards with a big cement pad there and a chain around it. So, and all those little, Grandma used to call them gold trunks that they got from the Russian Chinese people. I think it was goon. She called it gold trunks. I heard somebody talking about things that happened in there. They were from Parks Canada, and this lady was talking in Skagway one time, and she said, I asked her about it, and she said she thinks she knows where all those people went. There's about 10 or 12 of them. And everybody is gone now. I'm the only one left, the oldest one left in the Deshitan. So I sure would like to know where those people all went to. How could all of those little trunks go down the river and the outside boards be staying there? I really would appreciate if you guys could help us, because they were your people too, and the heartache is the one that made them go into the interior.
This is I introduced Richard George, one of the vice presidents. Bill Martin is the president of Central Council, Tlingit and Haida. And he has some good words here. everybody can take a day off on Monday. That's the best I could come up with. Well, I just want to say that I'm really honored to be part of this ceremony. You know, Tlingit, as does Ms. Dundas in her organization, tried to get the appropriate items back to the appropriate people and caretakers. And we at Central Council always make sure that whatever items we get, we turn over to the clan. It's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way we will always do it. We don't keep it for ourselves, and we don't hide anything. We're upfront on everything, and we make sure that before we even get the object, that the clan knows that we're going after it. So, with that, I'm really pleased that you took the time to be here and part of this ceremony. It's like welcoming back a family member that has been gone for years, and that's how real these pieces are to us. They're a part of us. They're part of our ancestors, and when they come home, it's a celebration. So, thank you again for coming, Richard.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate so much to stand among you here at this clan conference. This is the first that I've attended, and I'm really encouraged by this sharing of knowledge that goes on in so many aspects. There are times through the 3 days that I wished I could have been in the other room as well. So the thing that's happening here, that's what we're about. This is what Tlingit is about, to strengthen our people and what we stand for. And I'm really thankful to be a part of it. Gunashchish.
So let us show our gratitude and our feelings, our heartfelt feelings, that these items are officially back with the Sik'nax.adi and the Keex.Kwaan. So let's celebrate. Sheesh. Thank you. I think these items will be up here for a few more minutes before we pack them away again. These 3 items that we brought out are on their way back to Keex.Kwaan with the proper people. Gunashchish.